I still remember the sound of the rain that morning. It wasn't just falling, it was pounding, like nature itself was trying to warn me. I sat by the window, clutching my coffee, staring at the storm clouds as they crawled across the sky. Mondays were always tough, but this one felt heavier, like the world was holding its breath. My name is Marcus Hale, and for 6 years, Nexer Consulting was my entire life. 6 years of late nights, skipped family gatherings, and sacrificing every ounce of free time I had. While others were partying on weekends, I was buried in data sheets and client calls. I told myself it would pay off. I told myself loyalty mattered. What a fool I was. I left home early, like I always did. The roads were slick, headlights cutting through the mist as I drove downtown. I remember thinking about the Linton Group proposal sitting on my laptop, the one deal that would lock in my legacy at Nexera. They were our biggest client, and I had turned that account from a tiny contract into a powerhouse. If anyone was safe in the company, it was me, right? I parked, ran through the rain, and swiped my badge at the glass doors. The lobby smelled of that sterile corporate cleanliness mixed with burnt coffee from a cafe near the elevators. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. People were acting strange. Usually, my mornings were filled with nods, smiles, and quick, "Hey, Marcus," greetings. Today, silence. Eyes darted away as I walked by. Even Elena, my closest friend at work, barely looked at me. She gave me this awkward half-smile before gluing her eyes back to her screen. Weird. I shook it off and headed to my office, tossing my bag down and opening my laptop. Emails, deadlines, meetings, the usual chaos. I dove in, fingers flying across the keyboard. I was finalizing the proposal for Linton, triple-checking every figure. This deal was worth millions, and after months of negotiation, they were ready to sign. At 8:47 a.m., an email popped up. Subject, immediate meeting. From HR, time, 9:15 a.m. My stomach dropped. Immediate meeting? With HR? That was never good news. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart thudding in my chest. Maybe it was about someone else. Maybe they needed a statement about the budget cuts. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. At 9:10, I walked down the hallway. Each step echoed in my ears. The conference room door was closed, blinds drawn. I knocked once. "Come in," a voice called. Inside sat Karen, head of HR, and Greg, my manager. Karen had that fake, soothing expression HR people wear when they're about to ruin your life. Greg wouldn't even look me in the eye. "Please, Marcus, have a seat," Karen said softly. I sat, gripping the chair arm so hard my knuckles whitened. Karen folded her hands. "We appreciate your contributions to Nexera. However, as of today, your employment is terminated." The words didn't make sense at first. Terminated? That's what they say to criminals in sci-fi movies, not to top-performing employees. What? I laughed, a short, sharp sound. There must be some mistake. I'm leading 2 major accounts. I just closed a 7-figure deal last month. Greg finally spoke, voice cold, distant. "It's not performance-based. It's restructuring." That word, restructuring. Corporate code for your disposable. "You're firing me," I said, my voice shaking. "Without warning, after everything I've done for this company." Karen slid an envelope across the table. "You'll receive severance. Please return your badge and company property immediately." My throat tightened. This was it. 6 years of blood, sweat, and broken promises ended with a lousy envelope and 2 people who couldn't even look at me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the table, tear up the envelope, and tell them exactly what I thought. But I didn't. I stood slowly, my hands trembling. "You're making a mistake," I said, staring at Greg. "A big one." He didn't reply, didn't even blink. I walked out, past the sea of faces pretending not to watch, my heart pounding in my ears. The whispers started before I even hit the elevator. By the time the doors closed, I felt like I couldn't breathe. The spiral. I drove home in silence, rain streaking across my windshield like tears. My mind was a storm. How could they do this? No warning, no reason, just gone. My identity, my purpose, ripped away in a 10-minute meeting. I sat in my car for an hour before going inside. The apartment felt empty, colder than usual. I opened the envelope. 2 weeks of severance. That was it. 6 years reduced to 2 weeks' pay. I stared at the walls, at the framed photos of corporate events, awards, and plaques that suddenly meant nothing. Then came the anger. First, it burned quietly in my chest. Then it spread until I was pacing the room, fists clenched. They didn't just fire me, they erased me. Like I was nothing. Like all those nights I worked until 3 a.m. didn't matter. Like the holidays I missed didn't matter. And the worst part? Linton, my client, the one I had built from scratch. They'd hand it to someone else and pretend I never existed. No, I wouldn't let that happen. They wanted me out? Fine. But I wasn't leaving quietly. That night, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and started digging. Linton was more than a client. They were friends. I had built trust with their CEO, David Lang, over years of late-night strategy calls and last-minute saves. I knew their pain points, their ambitions, their secrets. And if Nexera thought they could cut me out of the picture, they had another thing coming. The first call. It took me 2 days to work up the nerve. I stared at David's number on my phone, fingers hovering over the screen. My heart pounded. If this went wrong, I'd burn a bridge I could never rebuild. Finally, I hit call. Marcus. David's voice boomed through the speaker. How's my favorite consultant? I swallowed hard. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. Silence on the line. Then, cautiously, what happened? They let me go, I said flatly. Restructuring. David cursed under his breath. You're kidding. After everything you've done for them. Yeah, I said, bitterness dripping from my voice. After everything. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what's your plan? And that was the question, wasn't it? What was my plan? I could beg for another corporate job, start from scratch, or I could take this pain, this anger, and turn it into something bigger. I'm starting my own firm, I said slowly, the words forming as I spoke, and I'm going to do it better than Nexera ever did. David laughed, a sharp, approving laugh. That's the Marcus I know. Keep me posted. As the call ended, I stared at the phone, adrenaline surging through me. This was it. The beginning. They thought they broke me. They had no idea what they'd unleashed. I woke up the next morning with the same fire in my chest that had kept me awake all night. The decision was final. I wasn't going to beg for another job or crawl back to corporate life like some wounded dog. No, if they wanted me gone, I'd build something better. Something they couldn't ignore. But the reality hit me as soon as I sat down at my desk. Building a business wasn't a motivational quote on Instagram. It was raw, ugly, and terrifying. I had nothing. No office, no team, no money. Just a laptop, a phone, and a grudge that burned hotter than anything I'd ever felt before. I opened my browser and started with the basics. How to register a company. How to set up a business account. I scribbled notes like a madman. Every click felt like a small rebellion against Nexera, a small middle finger to Greg and Karen and every smug smile in that office. I needed a name, something that spoke of strength, something that would make people remember it. After hours of scribbling and crossing out names, I wrote 2 words that made my pulse quicken. Ironclad Consulting. Solid. Indestructible. That's what I was now. I registered the LLC, bought the domain, and threw together a simple website. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. For the first time in days, I felt alive. By the 3rd day, I had an email signature that read, Marcus Hale, founder and CEO, Ironclad Consulting. It looked good. It felt good. But a name and a website didn't pay rent. Clients did. I thought about calling David Lang immediately, but something stopped me. If I came on too strong, too soon, I'd look desperate, and desperation kills deals. So I started small. I reached out to every contact I had, former clients, old colleagues, even that guy I'd met at a conference 2 years ago. Most of them offered sympathy, but the conversations all ended the same way. We'd love to help Marcus, but we're locked into a contract. Translation: good luck. You're on your own. Days bled into weeks. My savings started shrinking fast. I lived on ramen and instant coffee, working 18-hour days to craft proposals, write case studies, and fine-tune my pitch deck every night. When exhaustion clawed at me, I pictured Karen's fake smile sliding that envelope across the table and Greg staring at me like I was nothing. That image kept me going when nothing else could. Finally, after what felt like forever, I caught a break. A small tech startup needed help with their market expansion strategy. They couldn't pay much, but I didn't care. I treated that project like it was worth $1 million. By the end of it, they were thrilled. They referred me to someone else, and slowly, painfully, Ironclad started breathing. But it wasn't enough. I didn't want survival. I wanted victory. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. I saw the name on the screen, and my heart kicked into overdrive. David Lang. I answered on the first ring, trying to keep my voice calm even as adrenaline surged through me. Marcus, he said in that crisp, commanding tone of his. You got a minute? Always. I said, sitting up straight, my pulse hammering. I've been thinking about what you said, he continued. About starting your own farm. How's that going? Stronger every day. I lied smoothly, though the truth was I was 2 bad months away from being broke. Good, he said, and then his voice dropped into a more serious register. Because I've got a problem, and I think you're the only one who can solve it. I held my breath. Talk to me. Nexra has been slipping, he said. Ever since you left, it hasn't been the same. The new team, they don't get us. They don't understand how we work. I'm losing confidence. Every word was music to my ears. Go on, I said, forcing myself to stay calm. And, he continued, our contract with Nexra is up for renewal in 30 days. If I'm not happy by then, we're walking. My chest tightened. 30 days. In 1 month, the biggest client I'd ever managed, the one I built from scratch, could be free. David, I said slowly, are you saying what I think you're saying? I'm saying, he replied, if you can show me Ironclad can deliver better than Nexra, you'll have our business. All of it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. This was the chance I'd been dreaming about. The chance to take down Nexra with one strike. But then reality clawed its way in. I was one man with a laptop. Nexra was a corporation with hundreds of employees. Could I really pull this off? I'll make it happen, I said, my voice steady even though inside I was a hurricane of panic and adrenaline. Good, David said. I trust you, Marcus. Don't make me regret it. When the call ended, I just sat there, staring at the wall. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just a project. This was war. From that moment on, everything changed. Sleep disappeared. My entire world became ironclad and Linton. Outperformed Nexra. Outthinked them. Outworked them. I couldn't do it alone, so I called in every favor I could. Old contacts. Freelancers. Anyone I trusted. I couldn't pay them much, but I promised them something better, a piece of the future. My apartment turned into a command center. Laptops covered the kitchen table, takeout boxes stacked like barricades, coffee cups everywhere. Days bled into nights. We tore apart Linton's business from every angle, finding gaps Nexra had missed, opportunities they'd ignored. Every time exhaustion threatened to crush me, I saw Greg's smug face and felt the rage surge again. 2 weeks later, I flew to Linton's headquarters for the first big pitch. I walked into that boardroom wearing the sharpest suit I owned, clutching a presentation that could either change my life or destroy it. I went in swinging strategies, innovations, ideas that made Nexra's work look prehistoric. When I finished, the room was silent. David leaned back in his chair, studying me. This is impressive, he said finally. Relief flooded through me, until he added, but it's not just my call. The board has to approve. And Greg. The name hit me like a punch. Greg. Yes, David said. He's been lobbying hard to keep us with Nexra. Personally came to see us last week. Of course he did. Greg wasn't just trying to win. He was trying to bury me. Marcus, David said, You've got one more meeting. One last chance to convince everyone. Friday, 9 a.m. Bring your A game. I'll be ready, I said, even though inside, dread was curling in my gut. That night, back at the hotel, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with numbers and strategies. Sleep was impossible. I kept thinking about Greg, about how badly he wanted me to fail, about what he might be willing to do to make it happen. And then my phone buzzed. New email. No sender name. Just an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "You don't know what you're walking into." I frowned and opened it. One line of text stared back at me. Greg isn't fighting you because of loyalty. He's fighting you because of what's at stake. Do not trust David. I read it twice, 3 times. My stomach turned to ice. What did that mean? What was at stake? And why the hell shouldn't I trust David, the one person I thought was in my corner? I sat there in the dark, gripping my phone, the words burning into my brain. This wasn't just about a client anymore. This was something bigger. And I was about to walk straight into the middle of it. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. That email sat in my mind like a splinter I couldn't pull out. Do not trust David. Those 5 words changed everything. For weeks, I'd told myself David was my ally, my way back to the top, my revenge wrapped in a handshake. But now every conversation replayed in my head, every pause, every carefully chosen word. Had he been playing me all along? By dawn, I'd read the email 100 times, searching for something, anything, that would make sense of it. But there was nothing. No signature. No trace. Just those words, like a warning whispered in the dark. I spent the next day in a fog, running through the final details of the pitch, but my mind kept drifting back to that email. Who sent it? Why? And what exactly was at stake? I thought about calling David, confronting him, but that felt reckless. If it was true, he'd know I was onto him. And if it wasn't, I'd look paranoid. By midnight, I made up my mind. I'd go through with a meeting, but I'd watch everything, every glance, every reaction. If there was a game being played here, I'd find out. Friday came like a storm. I walked into Linton's glass tower with my briefcase in one hand and fire in my veins. The boardroom was on the 42nd floor, a sleek expanse of glass and steel overlooking the city. When I stepped inside, they were all there, the board members in their tailored suits, David at the head of the table, and then Greg. He was leaning back in his chair, that smug little smirk plastered on his face like a scar. Our eyes met, and for a second, the room disappeared. Just him and me, 2 predators circling. "Marcus," he said smoothly, standing to shake my hand. "Long time." I smiled, cold and sharp. "Not long enough." The tension crackled as I took my seat. David gave me that calm, fatherly smile he always wore. "Glad you could make it, Marcus. We're all eager to hear what you've got." I nodded, connected my laptop, and launched into the pitch. For 40 minutes, I gave them everything. Strategies Nexera never thought of. Solutions they didn't know they needed. I tore their old model apart and rebuilt it from the ground up. By the time I finished, the room was dead silent. Then David leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Impressive," he said softly. "Very impressive." I held his gaze, searching for something behind those eyes, something that would tell me if the email was right. But his face was a mask. Before I could speak, Greg chuckled. "Impressive? Sure. But let's not forget, gentlemen, Marcus here is a one-man show. Nexera has an army. We've got the infrastructure, the experience, the proven track record. If something goes wrong, who's going to fix it? Him." He gestured toward me like I was some kid trying to sell lemonade on the sidewalk. I clenched my fists under the table, forcing a smile. Sometimes an army is just a lot of bodies taking up space. What you need is precision. What you need is someone who understands your business better than anyone in this room. And we all know who that is. Greg's smile faltered, just a little, and that gave me life. David raised a hand before Greg could respond. "Thank you, both. We'll take everything under consideration." And just like that, it was over. The board filed out one by one, leaving me alone with David. "Walk with me," he he said. We moved down the hallway. The city sprawled out beyond the glass like a map of possibilities. Finally, he stopped and turned to me. You did good, Marcus. Really good. Good enough. I asked. He gave me that same calm smile. You'll know soon. And then he walked away, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. I went back to my hotel and collapsed on the bed, my mind spinning. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. And then, just as I was about to drift off, my phone buzzed. Another email. Same anonymous address. Check Nexra's public filings. Follow the money. My heart started pounding. I opened my laptop, pulled up Nexra's financial disclosures, and started digging. At first, nothing stood out, just the usual corporate jargon and numbers. But then I saw it, a series of quiet acquisitions over the last 6 months. Shell companies, off-the-books subsidiaries, billions in assets moving around like chess pieces. And then I saw Linton's name, not in the acquisitions, but in the projections. Nexra wasn't just trying to keep Linton as a client. They were positioning to buy them. If the renewal went through, Nexra would have leverage to trigger a takeover clause buried in the fine print of their partnership agreement. That was it. That was what was at stake. If Nexra got this contract, they wouldn't just keep Linton. They'd own them. And David? Suddenly, everything made sense. His calmness, his careful words. He wasn't my ally. He was setting me up, playing both sides to squeeze the best deal, maybe even a payout from Nexra for making it look competitive. Rage coursed through me, hotter than ever. They thought they could use me as a pawn in their billion-dollar game. They thought I'd just dance for scraps while they carved up the world. Not a chance. I spent the next 24 hours tearing through every document, every clause, every weakness in their plan. And when I found it, I almost laughed out loud. A single line in the acquisition clause that no one at Nexra had noticed, but I had. If Linton signed a renewal with Nexra, the takeover trigger would activate. But if they signed with any other firm, even a brand new one like mine, the clause would become void permanently. That was my bullet. The next morning, I called David. Congratulations, I said, keeping my voice cool. For what? He asked. For trying to play me. I said, for thinking I wouldn't figure it out. Silence, then a slow, measured breath. What do you think you know, Marcus? I know Nexra isn't just after a contract, I said. They are after you, and if you renew, you're handing them the keys to your kingdom. Another pause, longer this time. Then, where did you hear that? I don't need to tell you that, I said. What I will tell you is this. Sign with me, and the clause dies. Sign with Nexra, and in 6 months you won't be CEO anymore. You'll be an employee in your own company. For a long time, there was nothing but breathing on the line. Then David spoke, voice tight. Can you deliver? I already have, I said. The proposal isn't just a pitch. It's a roadmap. You follow it, you double revenue in a year, and you keep your throne. Another pause. Then, softly, send the papers. 2 hours later, the contract was signed. Ironclad Consulting had officially taken Linton away from Nexra. The biggest client they ever had, my client, was mine again. I sat there in the hotel room staring at the signed document, my hands trembling, a wild laugh bubbling out of me. I did it. Against every odd, every obstacle, I did it. And then my phone buzzed one last time. Another email, same anonymous address. Told you not to trust him. Check the news. I opened the news app and froze. Headlines everywhere. Linton CEO David Lang under federal investigation for insider trading. I read the article in stunned silence. The acquisitions, the shell companies. David hadn't just been playing Nexra. He'd been playing the markets, too, betting on his own company's sale